and I'm doing my master's project on prospecting behaviour. So, as Becky said, the jackdaws form a really interesting long-term bond, and as this pair, they have a nesting site. But what we've noticed is some of the jackdaws are shooting over to other nesting sites and having a good investigate, and we call this prospecting. But why they're doing this, we're not really sure. It could be to gather all sorts of information, but the proper term for prospecting is a tool to gather information for a future potential breeding site. But to put it bluntly, basically, it's in a community, you've got lots of very nosy neighbours just shooting around to each other's houses and have a good old look inside and see what information they can gather. And in this video, you can see it quite well. If it's going to play, yeah, it's playing. We've got an unmarked juvenile on the left, prospecting at this pair. And we've got the owner male on the perch and the owner female on the lid. And they don't seem to care too much about it being there. But nonetheless, it's going to have a little sneak peek around the foliage and see what's going on and get all that information together. And you can relate it to a human in terms of our getting a first house. We're not too keen on it. We're going to try and shoot our way up the property ladder and try and get a really good house but to keep on living in. But it's not just jackdaws that do this behaviour. So we've also got some other birds like the common tern and the snowy owl. So they do it before the breeding season and they look at the environment and then they decide on where they're going to breed. But other animals that breed cooperatively, like the meerkats and the cichlid fish, do this before dispersal, so it's extra territory prospecting. But it's actually considered to be quite costly. So if you're using your energy to be shooting around to all these other nesting sites, you're going to have less energy to forage for yourself or your chicks, but you could also be getting into scraps with your neighbours, and that's something you really don't want to be doing. But then you think, if it's costly, why are they doing it? So by travelling around these sites, they can gather this information and use it to their advantage to get a better breeding site the next year. Well, that's the plan. And then they get a better breeding success the next year as well. So whilst they're travelling, they're looking for these cues. And one of these cues could be the eggs in the nest. So it could be the number of eggs or the colour. And Gil's done some really funky research. And he's shown a relationship between the female health and the egg colour. So the healthier the female, she's got a lot more resources to put into her eggs, and that should show itself through the blue shell. And it's interesting actually because with each subsequent egg, she's got a little bit less resources and they get less blue. But a prospector coming in can see this and he or she can gauge the fitness or health of the female. They can also be looking at the pair that own the box or the site. Their activity, so when they start nest building, when they are feeding their chicks, can be a good indication of a good quality site. But relating back to Becky's work, they could also look at the pair bond or the affiliation. So how strong the pair bond is, how much time that they spend together, could show a good quality site because they might be more dominant and hold a better site. They could also be looking at the chicks in the nest. So the health of the chick they can gauge by looking at the gape, and that's this big yellow bit around here. So the more yellow it is, the healthier the chick. And that might represent more food in the area for feeding their chicks. But prospecting in general, not much study into it so far. There's lots to find out and it's really exciting. But jackdaws, though, we've seen, are prospecting at the end of the breeding season. So the eggs are gone, the chicks have fledged, what are they looking for? So that's what I'm going to try and find out. Why is this time of year the time to prospect? I also want to know who's doing it. Is it young birds, older birds, failed breeders? What's going on? So to answer these questions, I've got some technology, and it's RFID technology, which means radio frequency identification. But that it just comes in the form of that little tag there. And these can all be detected at the boxes by antenna. And when that is detected, it logs that information so we can look at the time of day, the age and the sex of the birds. So we've already got lots of information coming in and we can start thinking more about this behaviour. From that, I've decided to take some key boxes and then we can look at the behaviours associated with prospecting but around the box as well. So are they prospecting together, alone? Are they spending a lot of time there? Are they being subordinate, aggressive to other birds? What are they doing? Let's have a look. So this is a good one. We've got a pair coming in prospecting, and these have actually left their box. They've left it undefended. Other birds could be going in and stealing their box. They seem to focus on this one. they look a bit shady. Also, they're keeping an eye out. They know that they shouldn't be there. We've got the male on the right and the female on the left. And you can see that whilst one's starting to have a little gander inside, the other's keeping an eye out for the box owners. And then they swap. But you should also note, we're not really sure if they're looking for the same cues. The male could be looking for one thing, the female could be looking for the other. We just don't know. And then they scarper at the end because the owner's come back and it's gone above the box. It was just out of frame, otherwise I would have put that in. So all this information that I'm telling you about, we can now pull it together and really start to dissect that big question of why are they prospecting at the end of the breeding season. So it could still be the box owner activity. Are they being really aggressive after the chicks have fledged? Are they defending that territory? If so, it could be a place to go. Is it the parasites in the nest box? So throughout the breeding season, you get huge amounts of creepy crawlies going in. Is it fleas, flies, ticks? If there's a lot of them, you're going to want to avoid that area because that's going to negatively impact on your chicks in the next season. That's not good at all. It could be the nest material, so the size or structure, the contents itself. And it's interesting because different pairs clean out their boxes at different stages. Some will clean it out so there's just a little bit of dust at the bottom. Others don't touch it at all. And it seems to be pair specific. So this is a great cue potentially for birds to be following different activities around the community. But we need to remember that all of this is being learnt from their environment through social learning. And we're really starting to appreciate now how important that is for decision making in jackdaws. And that's something that Josh is now going to explain to you now in his talk. Thank you very much.